Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, continuing our deep dive into this Florida Gators program, heading into spring practice, fall camp, the 2024 season. We took a look at the offensive line, the defensive line. Now we're taking a look at the offensive skill position heading into that 2024 year. And if you're a Florida Gator fan, the number one thing you're most excited for is the young talent that is coming into this program or coming through this program. Right, you have five-star DJ Lagway joining this quarterback room. You have a guy like Eugene Wilson, who I think, just took the SEC by storm last year. Extremely dynamic with the football in his hands. If you're Florida, you're looking for these young guys to take that step in 2024. Want to do two things. One, talk about what we saw from this offense, Graham Mertz and the wide receivers in 2023, and then take a look at what we're expecting to see and how it's really going to shake out in 2024. Fired up to get into this one. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys, and these deep dives have been an absolute blast for me. Cannot thank you guys enough for rocking with the boys, supporting the fellas. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and more importantly, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section regarding who you think steps up in 2024. I'm going to give you guys my leading receiver and leading rusher projections. Would love to hear from you guys as well. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And I want to start with what we saw from this offense in 2023. And I went back and watched some film and watched a few games. And I watched some games where Florida struggled in, and I watched some games where this Florida offense really excelled. And I think the biggest change that you saw in this Florida Gators offense was two things. One, Graham Mertz gained a lot of confidence. He was getting the ball out quick. He wasn't really thinking as much, and he was just kind of going through his progressions and getting the ball out quick, on time, accurately. But more importantly, the biggest thing I noticed when you saw this Florida offense struggle compared to when you saw this Florida offense really excel was how aggressive they were being on offense, attacking that deeper third. When you look back at games where they struggled on offense, it was oftentimes a kind of lack of confidence in the play calling department, right? Go back to that Kentucky game, really not attacking the deeper third, not really making the defense really respect what you can do, pushing the ball down the field. But then when you go back and watch a game like against LSU or like Arkansas, when this Florida team was really kind of humming on offense, you saw this Florida Gator staff really get aggressive and ask Graham Mertz to kind of take the reins of this offense and attack the deeper third. And I think the biggest thing is, one, you obviously want to hit splash plays. You want to hit those explosive plays downfield. That's a no-brainer, and Florida was able to do that. But I think more importantly, when you are pushing the ball down the field and making safeties, making defensive backs really respect what you're doing, attacking that deeper third, it opens up those short intermediate concepts to just get a little bit more space. And that is where Florida wants to operate. But I think in order to operate successfully, you have to make sure the defense is really respecting all blades of the grass on the football field. And when you go back and watch the Kentucky game, very limited shots down the field, not really making Kentucky respect what you're doing, attacking that deeper third, you saw a Florida Gators offense that really just seemed too condensed. There wasn't really much space being created, especially over the middle of the field in those short intermediate route concepts. You go to the LSU game where Florida is making you respect that deeper third, attacking downfield. All of a sudden, yes, you're hitting the explosive plays, but more importantly, guys like Eugene Wilson have way more space to operate in those short intermediate route concepts as well. So going into 2024, Graham Mertz, obviously how well he played down the stretch of that season, the confidence that this Florida Gators staff has gained in Graham Mertz, I'm most excited for what this offense is going to look like and kind of taking over where it left off. You look back at the last three games Graham Mertz was healthy for: 36 points against Arkansas, should have won that game. 35 points against LSU. They were very much in that game on the road in Baton Rouge. And then 31 points on the road at Missouri, playing, top SEC competition, really, really close, and just really couldn't kind of come away with those wins. But you saw the offense really hit its stride. Now, specifically looking at that quarterback room, Graham Mertz was absolutely phenomenal. I love it. He had so much hate going into that 2023 season, opposing SEC fans really dunking on Graham Mertz and what he could do at the SEC level. He goes out, completes 73% of his footballs, top 5 in the country, just shy of 3,000 yards, 20 touchdowns to only 3 interceptions. And the big asterisk on that is, one, the offensive line in terms of pass protection was largely a disaster. And I thought you saw Graham Mertz do a really good job, especially in the back half of that season, getting the football out quick and knowing there are going to be some reps where I'm not going to have that much time, and I got to get the ball out quick on time to my playmakers. And he did a phenomenal job doing that. And I think this offensive line, we already took a look at it. I think it's in a much better spot than it was heading into that 2023 year. You give Graham Mertz a little bit more protection, I think this offense takes another step. And more importantly, you saw Graham Mertz in his numbers. I mean, he was really, really good attacking 20-plus yards down the field. And I think finally the staff saw that. And I think you're going to see an offense that is a little bit more aggressive and opened up, considering what you saw in 2023. Now, I think another really exciting talking point about that quarterback room is you have a young quarterback in DJ Lagway who, I mean, had a phenomenal senior season. I think is a perfect situation where he's going to come in, sit behind Graham Mertz for 1 year, continue to develop, and you probably have one of the top quarterbacks in the country in that 2025 year. And he's coming into a situation where he does not need to play early because you have a really good starting quarterback in Graham Mertz, and you're letting DJ Lagway just sit there, kind of marinate a little bit, and develop in this offense. So you look at the quarterback runway, that is a massive check mark, in my opinion, heading into 2024. Now you look at the wide receiver room, and I mean, it starts with Eugene Wilson. He was, I mean, going back and watching the film, there's not many more fun players to watch than what Eugene Wilson can do, specifically with the footballs in his hands. Two things that I really, really like about looking at the numbers and watching the film. One, when Florida went to Eugene Wilson, it worked every time, right? 85% completion percentage when Trey Wilson was targeted in this offense in 2023. That is astronomically high. And then you take a look at his numbers, 61 catches for 538 yards. 480 of those yards came after the catch. You're truly looking at one of the more dynamic players with the football in their hands in all of the country, not just the SEC. And I think that's massive when you have a guy that is kind of the quarterback's best friend. And you know that you can get the ball to Trey Wilson. He is going to do work for you after the catch. I think Trey Wilson is going to take a step in 2024, and I'm extremely excited about how Florida uses him. And I think he can take a step in terms of how he's used in this offense. You go back and watch that 2023 film largely, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but they kind of treated him almost like a gadget guy at times. A lot of end arounds, a lot of screens, not really letting him run that full route tree. I think with another year under his belt and another offseason, you're going to see Trey Wilson. Yeah, you're going to get him his touches with those end arounds and bubble screens, but you're also going to let him excel as a true route runner at the wide receiver position. I think you're looking at a bona fide wide receiver 1,000-yard receiver in 2024. Now, I think the next question is who kind of replaces that Ricky Pearsall role? Because you look back at that Florida Gators offense, it was Trey Wilson and Ricky Pearsall. Obviously, Ricky Pearsall going to the NFL draft, really one of my favorite wide receivers in that draft class. You bring in a guy like Chimere Dike, who I think is going to, again, kind of like Graham Mertz, take a lot of people by surprise. You go back to Chimere Dike in that 2022 year when Graham Mertz was his quarterback, that offense stunk, especially throwing the football. When they had success, and you go back to that 2022 film, Chimere Dike and Graham Mertz had a lot of chemistry together. And I think Chimere Dike is one of those guys that we talk about attacking that deeper third, using a bigger, more physical wide receiver that has good ball skills to really challenge defenses with that deeper third route tree. I think Chimere Dike can be that guy. So now you have a guy like Eugene Wilson who's feasting underneath. You have a guy in Chimere Dike whose safeties need to respect working down the field. That's a really good wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, not only from a talent standpoint, but really from how they balance each other out. And then you sprinkle in a couple other guys that I'm really excited about. Aiden Mizell, Andy Jean, 2 guys that going into year 2, I think you see a little bit more of, 2 really dynamic football players. I'm going to give one more shout out. And I'm not really sleeping on some of the wide receivers that you saw make some noise in that 2023 year. But this is a guy that's probably one of my favorite true freshmen in this Florida Gators class, and that is Jere Hawkins. When you talk about what made Trey Wilson so special as a freshman, he just was a better mover and more dynamic than the people that were trying to tackle him and cover him. Jere Hawkins is one of the fastest players in this 2024 class, a guy that's a little bit undersized, but you can't teach that speed. And that's the level of speed Jere Hawkins has coming in, I think is going to allow him to play early and often for the Florida Gators. You're asking me about a newcomer that could really take this wide receiver room to another level, I'm taking a look at Jere Hawkins and maybe kind of using Jere Hawkins like you used Trey Wilson last year and letting Trey Wilson kind of go more into that wide receiver one role in that offense. The last guy I want to talk about in terms of pass catchers, Arlis Bordenham. And I would say Hanson's a hammer in the run game. Very, very good blocker. So I'm not going to I don't want to not ignore that. He's a very, very good run blocker, not as dynamic as a pass catcher. Arlis Bordenham gives you some serious juice. And I think a guy that you saw flashes of how they want to use him in 2023, I don't think they used him enough consistently. He's a guy that I have my eyes on in that tight end room to really kind of work that middle of the field for the Florida Gators offense in 2023. The last position group you want to talk about is this running back room that obviously you lose Trevor Etienne, a running back room that I think is more talented than a lot of people give him credit. And I think a running back room is going to benefit from a Florida Gators offensive line that has, I think, taken some massive steps from that 2023 year. First guy you got to talk about, Montrell Johnson, 152 carries, 817 yards, averaged 5.5 yards per carry. Montrell Johnson, physical back, kind of runs how Florida wants to run the football. He's downhill, can invite contact, can make people miss at the second level. But the thing I love most about Montrell Johnson that I think maybe you didn't get enough of from Trevor Etienne is kind of finding those hidden yards, right? On 1st and 10, you're absorbing contact and changing a 2nd and 8 to a 2nd and 6 by using that big body and falling forward. I used the Blake Corum comp a lot for those kind of guys. Where Blake Corum in that 2023 year, and I'm a Michigan fan, so I've seen a lot of Blake Corum, where what he really brought to that Michigan offense was keeping them on schedule, right? Turning that 2nd and 8 run to a 2nd and 6, turning a 3rd and 5 to a 3rd and 2. That is massive. And it doesn't necessarily show up on the highlight reels, but that's kind of what Montrell Johnson brings to the table for this Florida Gators offense. And that was one of the big critiques that we had for Florida during that 2023 year. Just too often getting behind the chains, those 3rd and long situations where that offensive line just really struggled to hold up when defensive lines were pinning their ears back in those obvious passing situations. Montrell Johnson potentially allowing them to stay a little bit more on schedule, I think would mean massive things for this Florida Gators offense in 2024. And then you have a guy like Trayon Webb, you got a true freshman in Kyan Daniels. I mean, this running back room, would I be surprised if they maybe go add another running back in the portal after spring ball to just have another maybe veteran running back in that room? Maybe, but I don't really think they need to, because you liked what you saw from Trayon Webb. And I saw a lot of Florida Gator fans want to go out and get Quinshon Judkins. And yeah, Judkins would make this running back room better, but I'm happy that Florida, instead of prioritizing the flash in the transfer portal, just use that portal to go get good football players that are going to elevate this team. And so you bring guys like Devin Manuel and Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon on the offensive line. I think that means more than adding another flashy running back that you have to devote a lot of resources to in the transfer portal. You look at this Florida Gators offense, and I think you kind of look top to bottom. One, Graham Mertz looks like a true great quarterback at the SEC. I think this offensive line gets a lot better from 2023. The wide receiver position is that group that I'm going to be kind of ears to the spring practice notes in terms of hearing what wide receivers are emerging out of that group. But you look at this Florida Gators offense, especially with the confidence that Graham Mertz has in himself and the coaching staff has in Graham Mertz, I think there's a lot to be excited about with this Florida Gators offense that, again, the last 3 games that Graham Mertz was healthy for, put up 30-plus points in all 3 of those SEC games, 2 of which were on the road against really good opponents in Missouri and LSU. An offense that I think is under the radar, might surprise a lot of people in 2024. Excited to kind of see how spring practice shakes out for the Gators. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Next week, we take a look at that defensive secondary for the Gators. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.